Coming up tonight, we continue our journey across the ocean. The Harmony gets in the mood to party, and we take a look around the AquaTheater. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day number 11 of the cruise view from onboard the Harmony of the Seas, the latest and greatest ship in the Royal Caribbean fleet and the largest in the world. Today was Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016, and our location today, once again, we are in the process of crossing the Atlantic Ocean on the way from Barcelona, Spain to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And today our noontime location had us at 26 degrees and 25 minutes north by 66 degrees and 35 minutes west. That is roughly 350 miles away from Bermuda, so a little bit closer to Bermuda than we were yesterday, but still pretty far from any form of actual land, and obviously no land visible. Although we did see one cargo ship today. I believe that was the only ship I've seen this entire voyage across the ocean. 4 years ago on the Independence of the Seas, when we did that transatlantic, we saw quite a bit more traffic going on, but we took the more traditional direct route from Southampton to Lisbon to Azores and then straight across to Fort Lauderdale, where this time we really kind of went south along Africa, and now we're headed west across the ocean, which is a little bit longer and more roundabout way of doing it, and I'm guessing the way that most cargo ships would prefer not to, since it costs more money and fuel. But either way, we have not really seen too much in the forms of ships of any kind except for that one today. And our weather today, we had a sunrise at 7:33 a.m. this morning. And a sunset at 6:40 p.m. tonight. We had a high of 80 degrees, and we had listed partly cloudy conditions, but for the most part this morning it was beautiful out, nice, sun shining, but afterwards it seemed like by 10 o'clock and on, it was pretty much all cloud cover and really kind of dreary looking out there with a couple sprinkles throughout the day. No major storms or rain, but a couple sprinkles, and you could see the rain off the side of the ship as we're steering around it. The sea conditions were pretty smooth this morning, but it got a bit choppier as the day went on, and by the evening you could really feel the ship rocking around a little bit. Again, not as bad as it was at the beginning, but it also could just be that we've been on so long that we're now used to it. So for most people it looked like it would be another pool day, and it was forecasted to be a pool day, but unfortunately it did not turn out to be the best conditions for the pool. You certainly could do it. It was a nice mild wind, nothing too bad out there, just not a nice sunny day like the past couple. So that meant most people were going off of the compass, and for me at least, today's compass began once again with another David Kirkpatrick lecture, this time titled New Technology and What to Do About It. This was a lecture in which he covered all sorts of emerging technologies and future technologies. It was less focused on the film industry than his other lectures, but it still touched on it and discussed the effects that the film industry and the conceptual idea of the future that is used in films can actually shape the reality of the future for us. So that was certainly an interesting one, a little bit different than his other ones up to this point. Tomorrow will be his last lecture, and it'll be a more traditional film lecture. But during that lecture series, there were several interruptions over the ship-wide PA system. First one occurred at 9:39 when it was a Bravo Bravo announcement for a crew drill that sounded like it was taking place down in the engine rooms and osmosis room, pretty much down in the crew areas rather than the traditional guest areas. And 1.8 did break in to give an update on what the purpose was, and it was the weekly crew drill. Last time I did a transatlantic, it was the Independence of the Seas. We only had, I believe, 6 straight days at sea, so they of course conducted their mandatory crew drill, while in Nassau, the first or a final port of call in that sailing, the first one after the actual crossing. And this time we of course have 9 straight days at sea, which means that they cannot meet their legal requirement of running a crew drill every single week if they were to wait until a port of call. So they had to do it at sea today. This is the first time I've heard of one being conducted at sea on a cruise that I've been on. I'm sure it's a little more common than I'm aware of, but I've personally never heard of it, and it sounded like they did the full thing. They even closed all the watertight doors throughout the entire ship remotely from the bridge, something we saw them do on the Jewel, except this time they kind of did it within the drill itself instead of afterwards as a secondary test. The one thing that was missing from this drill was the ship-wide emergency system being sounded. They never fully tested that. I don't know if it's something having to do with the fact that they are at sea and not wanting to send false sounds and alerts out to ships in the area, of which there really weren't any, so it wouldn't have mattered, but it may still be against code. In either case, they did not run the horns or any of the alarms throughout the ship like you would usually expect to trigger one of these events. So that was this morning, and throughout the day then I did a couple activities such as the zip line and the abyss. I also went to the main dining room for lunch today. And main dining room, if you've never been to it for lunch, it operates in kind of a hybrid manner. You've got a buffet set up around the middle of the dining room that you can go to get a big salad. They also have some entree type items and desserts set up just like you would find in the Windjammer. So it was a little bit like you would expect in the Windjammer, but you can also order directly off of a dining room menu and have food delivered to you just like it would be for dinner service. And then this afternoon at 2 o'clock, we had the Captain's Corner for this sailing. We, of course, had the 3 Navigator Notes sessions that the captain ran. This is the first true Captain's Corner of the sailing, although we did answer some questions in the other sessions. And this one included the captain, food and beverage director, the chief engineer, and the cruise director up on the panel. So, pretty traditional panel with the exception of no environmental officer and the cruise director being an official part of the panel rather than overseeing the event as we've typically seen of these. Overall, it was a great Captain's Corner. A lot of humor throughout the event, something you usually don't see in these things, but it was definitely a more comedic panel than we're used to seeing in the Captain's Corners, and for the most part there really weren't any complaints or any of those other things that we typically see that just annoy everybody during the Captain's Corners. So it was an overall good one, not as technical a questioning as you would usually hear, but still a pretty interesting one. And it ended with a big finale of Captain Gus going up and performing live with the band.
They're even preparing it. I want to play with the band. Can I play with the band?
You're not going to play with the band.
Yes, I'll play with the band.
Following that, I then expected to go to the AquaTheater for the first showing of Hideaway Heist after yesterday's work canceled. Fortunately, once again today, the AquaTheater is still having technical issues, and they once again had to cancel both the 3 and 5 o'clock showing of Hideaway Heist. It is now scheduled for tomorrow, as it was the reschedule from yesterday, and I haven't heard if they've rescheduled today's for the last day or not, but most likely they will, because they will need more than just the 2 showings that are scheduled tomorrow. And hopefully everything will be fixed in time. They are currently out there in the AquaTheater right now at 2 in the morning working on it, so they're certainly trying to get it done. Hopefully they can get it done in time and we can see Hideaway Heist. They seem to have all the sets up and everything ready to go. There's just a technical issue with the AquaTheater itself that prevents them from running it. So that left a big opening in my calendar today, as I did have both showings of that scheduled to attend. So instead I went at 5:30 and had dinner instead of the traditional 6. Because I didn't go to the dining room today. Once again, I went somewhere else. This time I went to Johnny Rockets. Always go there at least once a sailing when it's a nice Johnny Rockets version. And Harmony does have the nice version. It is the one That is a cover charge. I believe it was like $6.95 for that cover charge, and order whatever you want. The delicious onion rings, and of course all those good burgers. You can also get the milkshakes, and if you're a Crown and Anchor person, you get the buy one get one milkshakes as well, which are always a great deal to do. So that's what we did for dinner tonight instead of the traditional main dining room. And then following that more casual dinner, then once again trying to hit as much entertainment as I can, as many times as I can. Attended Columbus the Musical once again at 7:30, and that show really does not get old. It's a much younger show than some of the older ones. A lot of new music that is only from the past couple years. It's been popular very recently, so I think it kind of speaks a little more to the younger generation. That's probably why it's a little more appealing to see several times. And it is only a 45 or 50-minute show, the more traditional length show, rather than the 90 minutes that Grease was. So it is a very easy show to go attend multiple times. So of course that was at 7:30, and immediately following that, I then went and stood in the standby line for the 9:30 comedy show. I did have it scheduled for 11 o'clock tonight, but it had some conflicts with other things, and the comedy show has been sold out the entire sailing with no option to cancel or move your scheduled reservation. So I had to do the standby line for that 9:30 show and got into it. And this sailing, sounded like he was on for 23 nights, so most likely the 7-nighter before this, the current 13-night, and then the 3-night little preview sailing in Fort Lauderdale he'll be on for. It was AJ Jamal, who was on The Tonight Show, a couple other ones, and his entire set had lasted about 45 minutes long, and it was entirely harmony and cruising based. A lot of jokes about the Windjammer, about the Harmony of the Seas herself, about things that have gone on in the sailing, like the lack of television stations or the internet issues. So it has certainly been a much more interesting comedic act, and it seemed like he probably wrote a lot of those jokes. I don't know if I would have attended one of the first nights, it would have been a completely different feeling show, but a good portion of it was certainly written just about this individual sailing, and was certainly very funny to see.
They didn't want me to tell you that, but we're lost. They keep changing the time back, because when you show up in Barcelona in 3 more days, you're gonna realize 13-day donut we did. We just did a complete circle. Go look outside, see where you know where you at. You ain't
But that does change with a lot of sailing, so you most likely will not see him when you're on the Harmony of the Seas, but maybe you'll get lucky and catch him, because he was certainly a good act. And then immediately following that, because that lasted roughly 45 minutes, I went straight up to the Promenade for the Totally Awesome 90s Street Party. That was the first true street party of this cruise, the only one that it appears on the Harmony of the Seas. They did have the 50s and 60s little party with Harmony High, but that was in Studio B, and it was really more about the dancing, where this was the more traditional street party that we see in the Centrums on other ships. And it lasted exactly a half hour. It was hosted by Tino, featured all sorts of music from the 90s. Felt like they spent some extra time on the music side of things, really kind of polish the transitions up compared to some of the other parties. The lighting seemed kind of cool. They had a lot of dancing to it, but overall it felt a little bit more simple than other parties, especially compared to all the activity that goes on in the Centrum and just how overproduced all the shows in the Harmony are. This one, by comparison, was very simple. It was certainly not as simple as Harmony High, but it was a little bit more simplistic, I thought, than some of the other parties we saw. It was a good one, worth attending, if not just for the fact that it was 90s music, which is better than the 50s and 60s or the 70s party music. It was poorly attended. I thought it didn't seem like very many people showed up for it. I know leading up to this cruise, a lot of people were complaining about the fact that they chose the 90s because people just don't like stuff that doesn't appeal to them and can't accept that not everything is made for them. So I think a lot of people chose to just absolutely ignore this event, but it was certainly worth attending, and it was a good party. So if you're on the Harmony, make sure you do come out to it. I don't know if it'll always be scheduled this way, but when it ended at 11:15, exactly a half hour later, it immediately rolled into Studio B directly below it with RED Nightclub Experience. This is another party event, except it's not a true party. It's a little bit more like a mild version of Groovy Town. It had a very heavy, over-the-top nightclub feel. They put down some screens to help block parts of the stands and allow them to do some projection on there to add to the atmosphere. They had a giant rotating RED logo. They put the DJ up on the stage, and they even put some counters throughout the stands to give you places to put your drinks and to sit near. And throughout the whole show, they had music and all sorts of things going on to really build that atmosphere in addition to the just blaring music coming from the DJ. So it was a over-the-top nightclub experience, but like Groovy Town, they had occasional moments where people would come out from the different casts. I'm not sure if it was Royal Theater, which theater cast it was. They had people come out from the cast and just kind of roam through the crowd to add a little more atmosphere and a little bit something special and unusual to the event throughout the night. And that event, as I mentioned, started at 11:15. Those little events seemed to keep going on until about 1. The crowd was pretty decent sized crowd, especially on the dance floor at the start of the event, and that remained until about midnight. It emptied a little bit, but not too much. 1 a.m. it seemed like everybody just kind of evacuated the venue. There was just a massive line of people leaving at pretty much exactly 1 a.m., so people must have planned a bedtime around it. But it was certainly emptier after that, and the party did continue on until about 2 a.m. this morning. And RED, of course, originated on the Quantum of the Seas in 270. There they have aerialists. They have a little bit more to it, so in about 6 months when I sail on the Anthem of the Seas, we'll have to compare that RED party, the original concept for the RED party, with the one that they've introduced on board the Harmony of the Seas here in Studio B. Because obviously they have a little more flexibility in 270 with the height and all the extra options going on compared to what Studio B is capable of. And from what I understand, the whole RED Nightclub Experience was created by the company that did that kind of stuff for 270 on the Quantum of the Seas. So it of course has a little bit of those elements and that advanced technology to it. So RED lasted until about 2 a.m. and that about ended the day for us today. We, as far as I know, are not setting the clocks back tonight. I don't believe I saw anything about that or heard anything about it happening. So tomorrow will likely be still on the same time, and we'll once again have another sea day, but first we've got a big episode today. For today we do not have a venue tour or dining or an interview. We have all of it in one, basically, with a guided tour of the AquaTheater and an interview with the stage manager for the AquaTheater on board the Harmony of the Seas. Today I'm joined by Alex, who is the stage and production manager in the AquaTheater on board the Harmony of the Seas. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Could you provide a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. I originally started doing theater way back in high school, just as like a hobby, and then eventually it became clear that I really enjoyed doing theater. I really loved it, so I decided to try and make a career out of it. So right after school, I started attending Salem State University north of Boston for theater stage management, right? So I completed my BFA in stage management at Salem State. Over the course of that time, I was doing different internships around New England, where I'm from, and a little bit around the country as well. After graduation, I got an internship with Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas at Mystere at the Treasure Island. So I was there for about 4 months, and then after that, I wanted to travel. I wanted to save a bit of money, and a lot of my friends at Mystere were like, "Hey, you should try the cruise ships." So I was like, "Okay, who has the best cruise ships?" And they said Royal Caribbean, and now here I am.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Then, what kind of previous venues have you worked on board these ships?
On board the ships, I've done almost all of them, excluding 270 on the Quantum. So I originally, as most new production managers, they start their career in Studio B, which is the ice rink. That tends to have some of the simpler shows, the smaller venue. So I spent about 4 months total in Studio B. And when I came to the Oasis, I moved up to the main theater in the Oasis for Cats, the Broadway musical, and Come Fly With Me, the production show. And I spent about 2 months in the main theater before I was tapped to come to the AquaTheater. So I've now been in either the AquaTheater on the Oasis or on the Harmony for about 8 months.
So the Oasis is about 7 years older than the Harmony. So how does that AquaTheater compare to this one?
It's similar in many ways, and it's very, very different in many ways, as you can imagine. The overall construction, design, and execution is very similar. For the Harmony, they've made just a lot of really small tweaks and adjustments to make it safer and more spectacular for the guests. So, for example, here on the Harmony, we have a more complex aerial flying system than on the Oasis. The Oasis is a very simple 3-point system. 3 points over the stage, they go up and down, and that's pretty much it. They swing out. Here on the Harmony, we have what's called a 3D flying system, which is pretty cutting edge. It's pretty state of the art. It allows us to use 4 different independent winches to fly an aerial performer pretty much all over the venue at any point around the venue, up, down, left, right, doesn't matter. So that's one of the big changes for this venue. Other than that, they improved the fountain system a lot. The fountain system on the Oasis is a little dumber compared to the one we have here. This one is capable of all sorts of different interesting things. But large in part, it's very similar because the design, it worked so well on the Oasis that they didn't feel the need to change much for the Harmony.
And then when you have a venue this large, it spans several decks, how do you manage to coordinate everything that's going on all over the venue?
It takes a village, let me tell you. The entertainment team is the principal caretakers of the venue. Myself and the cruise director, we're the ones who are responsible for the day-to-day scheduling and keeping on top of the maintenance and things like that. But when it actually comes to the execution of the maintenance of the venue, we have a huge amount of support from the marine department, from the engineers, from the electrical engineers, from the bosun, from the painters. Everybody on the ship in some way is involved in what we do here in the AquaTheater. And it really takes the entire team to make it work.
And then at what point in the process of a show are you kind of brought in to get the reins of what's going on with it?
It depends on the timing, really. Like for me, I've only been on board this ship for about 4 weeks. But for the takeout process, there's 2 different AquaTheater production managers, basically. There's one Aqua PM who joins the ship in the yard in France before the ship is even launched. And they come into the process probably about 2 or 3 months before the cast even arrives on board. And their principal responsibility is building the theater to the specifications and the high expectations that Royal Caribbean has. So they join the ship about 3 months before the cast gets there. About a month before the cast comes on board, they're doing rehearsals in Miami in the studios. About a month beforehand, that's when the second AquaTheater production manager will join the cast and start working directly with the cast. And she becomes kind of their caretaker through their whole process on shoreside, and then she comes to the ship with them to join them to install and create the whole show with the production team on board.
And then with a cast change, the entire AquaTheater cast leaves and joins the ship together. How does that work with the production side? Do you join at the same time, or is it off sync?
For the cast, they, like you said, they all come at the same time, leave at the same time. For the production team, it's completely scattered. It's completely different. So for most of my contracts, I usually spend about 4 months on board and then 2 months at home. For the stage staff, it's about 7 months on board. Same for the rigging specialists. So we all kind of come at different times. But usually the resident permanent production manager is always on board for the cast install process, just to make it as smooth as possible for that whole situation.
And then when you're working in a venue like the AquaTheater, it's right at the end of the boardwalk, it's visible from the sports deck, there's no way to close it down or get privacy. How do you handle always being open, basically, to the public?
It's a very difficult challenge, and a lot of it is we try to keep the venue looking as beautiful as possible all the time. We're on all the time. So there's always, as you said, many sets of eyes on the AquaTheater at any given time, both from the guest standpoint and from the crew standpoint. There's always someone making the rounds to make sure the house is looking pretty. There's always, we have the bar servers here all the time. We have the crew staff walking through. So everybody kind of keeps an eye on the AquaTheater all the time. We have cameras. The cameras go into my cabin so I can turn on my TV and see what's going on in the AquaTheater, which is pretty convenient. But pretty much it all boils down to making sure the venue looks as best as it can all the time, 24 hours a day. Yeah, it's a challenge, but like I said before, it takes the whole team to make it work. But we try.
So the AquaTheater's main feature is its pool, and we're obviously on a moving ship, so things kind of move around. How do you handle that in testing conditions to make sure it's safe to continue with the show?
Well, the most important tool I have is my instincts, my experience in the AquaTheater, and the feedback I get from the cast. That's the most important part, because I'm up on deck 12 running the show. I'm not in the pool. I'm not experiencing it firsthand. They are, my scuba divers are. So I need to make sure I have a constant dialogue with them about how they feel at any given moment in the pool. What are the conditions like? Do you feel safe? Are you having a problem? Do we have to modify something? Do we have to stop and reassess the conditions? Also, I have a great relationship with the entire navigational team on the bridge. If we see developing conditions that are going to affect the safety of the performers, they will call me right away and they'll say, hey, we have some lightning up ahead. Hey, we got a crosswind coming up in about 20 minutes. They got to keep me informed of the whole situation, which allows me to make a decision about whether we have to stop or modify the show as needed.
And then, let's see. So then during the show, you're still in communication. If something were to come up and you have to stop the show, how does that get communicated through to the cast and everybody else that's maybe out there currently getting started? Yeah,
it's usually pretty smooth, knock on wood. Normally, well, for the cast, we have a really clearly established protocol. If for any time during the show the music fades out and it stops, they stop what they're doing and they exit the pool into the wings at the side of the stage. So they know right away that if they don't hear any music, something has gone wrong and we have stopped the show. Once we do stop the show, we have an automated recording that will play saying, oh, we have technical difficulties or we have weather conditions that are causing a problem. And once that happens, I pretty much have to communicate, like you said. It's really convenient for this venue because I'm in constant communication with literally everybody. Everybody can hear me at any given time. The stage staff, the rigging specialists, the scuba divers in the pool, even the cast. If the cast is underwater, we have an underwater speaker system which lets me communicate directly with them through my headset in the booth. So basically I tell everyone, hey guys, we're going to stop the show in 2 minutes, or we're going to stop the show right now. Please fade the tracks, please exit the pool. And then with this team, the team I have right now is outstanding. They only send me the best, so the transition from running a show at full speed to a stop is pretty smooth usually. Getting back started again, it's the same process but in reverse. I have to go around the house and contact everybody to make sure everybody's on the same page. They know where we're starting from, they know when we're starting, and then start the show. So usually it goes pretty smooth. The key is communication. Yeah.
So you've got a lot of different elements in the shows, a lot of things going on. What kind of safety checks and balances do you have in the venue itself to ensure things are safe for someone to, say, jump off of the high dive?
Yeah, pretty much everything that we do in the show and in the venue has more or less a double or triple safety redundancy built into it. The best example I can give are the hydraulic platforms we use for the stage. At any given time during the show, if I want to move one of these platforms, I have to communicate with the scuba divers underwater, and I have to say, oh, is the stage lift clear to go down? And they'll say yes or no, and then I'll say, okay. I can also see it from my booth. I have a camera directly under the lift. I can check it out, make sure nothing is amiss. And then I also have, around the edge of the lifts, I have what's called astragals, or safety edges. And those are electronic circuits that if you even touch it a tiny bit, it trips right away and it'll shut off all the hydraulic pumps and stop it completely. As far as the diving is concerned, we have a pretty basic, simple, but reliable traffic light system. So each of the 3 dive heights has a separate red or green light depending on the situation. Now for a diver to go in the water, it's the same process as controlling the hydraulic lifts. I have to say, stand by for a stage left 10-meter diver. Is it clear? Yes or no? Yes, it's clear. I can also visually confirm that it's clear from my booth and from the camera. And the lift has to be all the way in its lower position, or it won't even let me give a green light. I'm the one who controls the traffic lights, but for some reason, if the lift stops 1 foot from the bottom and no one notices, God forbid, and I try to give that green light, nothing's going to happen. It's a mechanical key switch that'll prevent me from giving a green light. So everything we do pretty much has double, triple safety precautions built into it.
And then when there is something wrong, if it's either technical or somebody not in the right spot at the right time, what kind of tolerance do you have before you actually have to stop things?
Usually we can modify on the fly. So if it's a little minor thing like, oh, he forgot his cue and now he's on the wrong side of the pool, okay, we'll cut those dives. We won't do those dives and he can get back to where he needs to go, no problem. If it's a bigger issue, like a big mechanical, hydraulic issue or something like that, something that's going to directly affect the quality of the show and the safety of the performers, then we will stop the show, see if we can fix it in that moment, take about any more than 10 minutes, and then we're probably going to postpone the show. Because we don't want to have 800 people sitting around twiddling their thumbs for that amount of time. So if it's something big like that, we will stop, we will figure out what to do about it.
When you do have to take a pause or stop in the show and then you're going to start it back up again, how do you coordinate where everybody should be to sort of pick up in a new location?
Usually the shows that we have are divided pretty well into different like concrete sections, right? So we have, for example, Big Daddy's Hideaway Heist, the show we did yesterday. It's got the lifeguard section, it's got the shake your tail feathers section, it's got the mamba section. So usually I'm not just going to pick a random point. I'm going to go from the top of one of these sections, and then everyone kind of can be, okay, I know where that is, I know how that happens, and then we go from there.
And then what is the most difficult scene for you to sort of coordinate and pull off between the two shows?
For me, it's like the first 20 minutes of Fine Line. It's actually broken up into 3 different sections, but because of the quickness of the cues and the amount of stuff happening all at the same time, the first 20 minutes feels like one long continuous section for me. I basically don't stop talking for 20 minutes straight. At that given time, we have multiple lifts moving, we have the flyer coming in around the house, we have 10-meter divers, we have 3-meter divers, we have synchros in the pool doing synchro stuff. So that whole transition, the first 20 minutes, is pretty hectic for me, just because there's so many little things happening all at the same time, and I have to try to keep an eye on everything all at once.
So then, would you mind giving us a little bit of an overview of the AquaTheater?
Sure. Okay. So here in the AquaTheater, for me personally, I run the show from up on deck 12. That's my control booth up there. That's where all the automation is controlled. That's where I run all the traffic lights. That's where all the cameras are. That's where that's like the nerve center of the show. On the opposite side, it's the exact same for sound and light. They have the sound and light controls on the starboard side of the ship. All the action obviously happens in the pool. It's a 550-ton pool. That's how much fresh water is in the pool at any given time. The pool itself is divided into 3 different hydraulic lifts, which can operate simultaneously and independently. We use those pretty extensively during the show. That's how we have all those the magical reveals of people just rising out of the water. We achieve that through that technology. Up above, we have the 3D flying apparatus in the middle of the venue. That's where we have our 3D flyer. That is used pretty heavily in the Fine Line, which is our primary show, and it's used as well in Big Daddy's Hideaway Heist. In addition to that one, we have the 3 points over the stage, points 1, 2, and 3. We only use points 1 and 2 for Fine Line, and these ones are pretty much the exact same that are on Oasis in the Allure. It's a very similar, very simple system. It's a singular winch and it's a singular carabiner that hooks into a flyer, and they fly all around and do whatever they need to do. Over the stage, we have our 3 different dive platforms. We have the 3-meter platform, which is actually a 3-meter Olympic-grade aluminum springboard. Very expensive, very reliable, and as you can see in the show, they get pretty high on that thing. Up on the next level, it's our 10-meter platform. That's a static platform, and the same thing for our 17-meter platform all the way at the top. The 17-meter platform is our highest dive tower, 17 meters or 58 feet, all the way into the pool. The pool itself is about 14.5 feet. So that'll give you an idea of what they're dealing with. And let me tell you, from up there, the pool looks about the size of a quarter.
Right. So is there anything else that you would like to say to the viewers?
Come see a show. Come on a cruise. It's one of the most unique and beautiful venues and shows and ships in the world, and you'll be doing yourself a favor if you come on by and take a visit.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
So, I want to thank Alex for taking the time to show me around the AquaTheater. I think it was really interesting, all this stuff there. The AquaTheater, of course, is the premier venue on board the Harmony of the Seas and all of the Oasis-class ships. It is the new theater venue on this class. We've, of course, had Studio B introduced on the Voyager class. We had 270 on the Quantum class. but it was the Oasis class that introduced the concept of an AquaTheater. So that means you have 3 different ships to choose from if you want to see one of these Aqua shows and all the different functionality of one of these AquaTheaters. So that about does it for today. Once again, I'm Picone. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we take another look at what's going on board the Harmony of the Seas on this crossing. But first, stay tuned for the links.